Good afternoon, Patricia.
Energy Minister Angus Taylor risks a Senate veto over his new technology roadmap after he vowed earlier today to put taxpayer funds into carbon capture projects. Now, we know that they are strongly opposed by the environmental movement. Can you explain why this is one of the key priorities? Where's the evidence that this is going to work, given it's been such a long time that people have been trying to make this technology work and it hasn't quite got up to scale?
So, Patricia, to be fair, I think the technology does work. It's been deployed in many places around the world. I think there are 19 active, large-scale carbon capture and storage sites operating around the world. So the technology works. The challenge is economics. It's not an environmental challenge. It's an economics challenge. I'm not sure why there's objection to it. CCS is put forward by the IPCC, the United Nations IPCC, as a necessary technology if we are going to achieve net zero emissions. It's put forward by the IEA, the International Energy Agency. CCS takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere or captures carbon dioxide that would otherwise go into the atmosphere. So it's not really clear to me what the basis is of objecting to it as a technology. There is an economic question, but that's for businesses and investors to determine.
But OK, if they have determined that it's not economically viable at a large scale, which is its flaw, that's the central problem, and that's why it hasn't been expanded. Doesn't that mean that it's not something that we should continue to pursue? I mean, clearly, if it's failed on that grounds, Chief Scientist, what's the point?
So one's got to say, where has it economically failed? So I should be clearer. It hasn't been economically successful for fossil fuel electricity generation. It might one day, but it hasn't yet. Where it has been successful are in processes that intrinsically produce carbon dioxide as a byproduct, rather than processes where you have to actively capture it. So think of the Gorgon project up in the Northwest Shelf, where they're producing natural gas. Whether or not you agree that they should be producing natural gas, it's a separate issue. They are. Now, natural gas, the fundamental component is methane, the chemical that burns. But when you bring the gas out of the well, it's contaminated, depending on the well, with some percentage of carbon dioxide. It could be 10%. So you're getting 90% methane and 10% carbon dioxide. And when you then liquefy that gas in order to ship it overseas as LNG, liquefied natural gas, what do you do with the 10% that didn't get liquefied and sent off in the ship? Well, historically, that just goes into the atmosphere. The Gorgon license requires that the producers bury that carbon dioxide. They've got the carbon dioxide anyway, they just have to bury it. It's not that expensive. They're burying it in disused wells, more or less on site. 4 million tonnes a year. It's well within their economic envelope. They're shipping LNG profitably around the world. So that's the case where it works. It saves that 4 million tonnes of carbon dioxide from going into the atmosphere, and the economics work. So, for example, another possibility, yet to be proven, but it's probably going to look economically favourable, is the alternative way of making hydrogen. The renewable way of making hydrogen, if you start with solar, wind or hydroelectricity, electricity sources, and you split water, but you can also take natural gas or coal and through a process of reforming or gasification make hydrogen, but you end up with a concentrated, actually a pure stream of carbon dioxide. So there's no cost capturing that carbon dioxide. It's just a byproduct at pure concentration of the process. So your only cost is transporting it to the site where it's going to be permanently sequestered underground. Now, I don't know about the economics there, but it's certainly worth exploring because we believe we need lots of clean hydrogen going forward.
Dr. Finkel, just yesterday, Malcolm Turnbull, the former Prime Minister, was right here at this time on this program, very critical of this roadmap and this focus on gas too. Were Malcolm Turnbull's comments yesterday helpful?
Look, the roadmap is not about gas. There's a lot of discussion about gas, but it's not central. It's virtually not even part of the low emissions technology roadmap into our future of low emissions. The technologies that are prioritised through the roadmap are clean hydrogen. zero emissions metals such as clean steel and zero emissions aluminium. Storage, that's batteries and pumped hydro to support solar and wind electricity being brought into the national electricity grid at the maximum possible rate and at the largest possible scale. And geosequestration and biosequestration. So the first three are low emissions technologies that can replace high emissions technologies. The fourth and the fifth, geosequestration and biosequestration, they're necessary. We need to mop up what we can't eliminate from fundamental processes.
Okay. Each year, the Energy Minister will deliver a low emissions technology statement to Federal Parliament, setting out the challenges, the opportunities and priorities in reducing carbon emissions. How can investors be confident if the door has been left open to the sort of annual statement? I mean, there's no kind of stick approach. There's no way of ensuring that emissions are lowered. These are ideas, but where is the actual execution and the promise of where it gets us to?
So if I was an investor, Patricia, I'd be more concerned if the government was announcing the low emissions technology statement and then putting it on the shelf and forgetting about it. So the fact that the government has said that this is the first milestone in a roadmap or a roadway into the future, and that there will be annual milestones, I think the investors will see that as very, very encouraging. Just like in the National Hydrogen Strategy, when you don't have clarity as to what the future technology will deliver, you have to have an adaptive approach to your strategy. So through these annual updates, the government will be able to fine-tune the strategy. It's quite clear in the words in the strategy, there is no intention to do radical shifts. The intention is to adapt a strategy to better fit in with the kinds of services and technologies and products and processes that investors are delivering. My experience talking to the investors is they are quite confident in the approach that has been taken in this strategy.
Okay, but do we know how much the nation's emissions will be reduced by through this technology plan? Given, as you say, some of these technologies we're just exploring, we don't know what they can deliver. So how do we know about how much we will reduce in terms of our emissions?
So the estimates that we've put into the published statement is that around about 250 million tonnes a year would be avoided from what would otherwise have been carbon dioxide emissions and methane emissions in Australia for domestic use or for export purposes. That's very, very substantial by 2040.
Wouldn't a carbon price or a national energy guarantee be a better way forward?
Look, you can propose lots and lots of different ways forward, but the problem that we're facing is emissions that are produced by technologies that we've developed in the last few hundred years. And these technologies are incredibly important. Our civilization wouldn't exist without them. So we can't do away with the services that are there. What this roadmap proposes is that we focus on producing the low emissions technologies that will compete with the high emissions technologies and with the appropriate government support through signalling, investment in research, demonstration and co-investment in deployment. These are technologies that can reduce emissions at large scale, cost effectively. Government intervention can make a difference and they will effectively outcompete the high emissions incumbents. So it's technology fixing the problems that technology has wrought. I personally think that is a very sensible way forward.
The Grattan Institute's Tony Wood was on the program yesterday. He said investors will not invest until they have got some sort of carrot and stick to put the money on the table. Does he have a point?
I think that the reality shows that investors will invest. The rate of solar and wind generation investment in Australia per capita is extraordinary. We are investing this year, last year and the year before at around 10 times the world average per capita and 3 times the rate that Germany, the second highest investing country, is investing. So investors are investing at the moment. I think they will continue to do this, to invest, because the government is giving them a good signal, an excellent vision of the future through this low emissions technology statement. So I'm optimistic.
The government hasn't committed to a target of net zero emissions by 2050. What was your advice to the government on this?
The important thing to do is to drive emissions down as quickly as we can. And there are two ways you can execute on a strategy. You can have a target and then think about how you might achieve that, or you can just commit to doing the right things that will move you on a pathway towards a better outcome.
Okay,
lower
but
emissions at lower cost and high reliability in this case.
With respect, Dr. Finkel, okay, you could just keep going, hoping for the best, right? Like it's the vibe. I hope that we're going to get there. Don't you need to know where you're going?
No, that's not fair, because that's implying a naive hope.
Okay.
This is a strategic
Then why not make the commitment then?
That is being indicated. Look, if things work extraordinarily well, Australia might achieve net zero, who knows, before 2050. Achieving net zero is difficult. It's not going to take place by the strategies, as good as they are, that are on the ground today. They will need to be evolving year by year, going through the coming 1, 2 and 3 decades. I think it makes sense to invest in finding the technologies and the cost pathways for developing those technologies down to a lower and lower price, so that they give us zero emission solutions to the technological needs that we have. Makes a lot of sense to me, Patricia.
Okay, I just want to talk to you about another one of your projects. You're very busy. You travelled to Sydney with Victorian health officials and the ADF to study New South Wales's gold standard contact tracing system. That's the language the PM used for it. Why did the Victorian system have so many shortcomings? And do you feel like they've been properly addressed now?
Look, the Victorian system got overwhelmed. I can't comment on what it was that led to the caseload getting as high as it did, but it did. And the system just wasn't designed to deal with such a high caseload. Every single positive case, day after day, needs a number of people involved in the contact tracing to talk to the person who's got the positive result, to discuss their isolation and their needs, and then to do the same with all of their close contacts. It's very complex, it's very difficult. The system wasn't designed to cope. What I've been doing with the Victorian government, and it's their work, but I'm advising and helping to support them on developing a new system that will be fully digitised, or an electronic system if you like, from end to end, from the time that someone goes to have their tests done. So no longer will there be paper pathology forms when they get their tests done. Everything will be digital, all the way through the path labs to reporting to the Department of Health. The interview process will be digital and supportive of the tracer through to the people being contacted. It's a big job. The department's working hard on it. A lot of progress has been made, and the result is that as of now, through that and other improvements that have been made, the end-to-end time has been dramatically reduced. We have set, or I have articulated or re-articulated the goal that comes from the Burnett Institute, that if you can get the time, the end-to-end time from tests through to reaching out to the close contacts and telling them to isolate, if you can get that down to 48 hours, there's a dramatic reduction in the transmission rate. And that is a goal that is worth achieving, and I think is within reason going to be achieved.
When will it be achieved? Because that's key. The Victorian Premier has indicated, for instance, that restrictions may be eased in Melbourne from Sunday, so that he might go beyond his roadmap and actually accelerate some of the easing of restrictions. Yeah. And all Victorians, I'm sure, are having a party just thinking about what that might be, inside their heads, of course, not real parties. Is the state's level of contact tracing up to scratch, up to that benchmark that you've just articulated?
Fair question. It's getting there. It's not a binary was bad, is good step. It's a gradual ramp from where it was to where it's going, and we're well along that pathway. I'd say the system is significantly more capable today than it was. It's not yet where we want it to be, but gosh, it's making a lot of progress. And I personally, as a Victorian, feel much more comfortable with how the rapid contact tracing system is working in Victoria now.
So if the government is to go beyond its roadmap and ease further restrictions on Sunday, do you think that it's ready, that it's a good time to do that it's not risky?
I think it is, given that the low caseload level that the government has driven down to through the lockdown, the improved system should be able to cope to keep us at low levels, even if we come out of lockdown. A rapid contact tracing system is essential. We don't have a vaccine. We don't have a fully effective therapeutic. The only thing we've got to help us to coexist with a fully functioning economy, and for the fully functioning economy and the virus to coexist, the only thing we've got is a rapid contact tracing system. And I think we're probably almost there or there. The improvements over the last 2 months have been very significant.
Dr. Finkel, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure, Patricia.